Hey guys, welcome back to another Sunday special. In these videos, what I do is I go through the markets and I talk about setups and I look at different charts that I'm interested in the week ahead. I share my thoughts and the best insights that I can offer to you guys here on YouTube for free. So if you enjoy my videos, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe button, and let's get into today's Sunday analysis. Okay, so this week is going to be interesting because when we look at the US dollar, which is where I'd like to start today, by the way, let's take a look at DXY. If you don't know what this is the US dollar currency index. It is basically a conglomerate. It's like looking at the dollar versus the euro, the dollar versus the Aussie, the yen, all at the same time. Relatively speaking, it's just showing how strong the dollar is against a basket of other currencies. And as we can see here on the 4-hour chart, which this is about 2 weeks of data right there, we've seen really dominant selling markets here for the US dollar, which is really interesting because it makes sense though. We've heard some dovish things from the Fed via Jerome Powell during a speech, and then we had really not great jobs numbers last week, which continue to push the dollar down relative to most of the major currencies out there. So where do we go from there, and what is in store for the US dollar next? Well, if we zoom out, let's take a look at the daily chart first. We do still have this thing in the context of a bigger upward trend. It doesn't mean that the dollar can't go lower, but what it does suggest is that there may be a reasonable expectation for some form of a bounce towards this low here on the dollar. Now, what you'll notice is that we do have a series of higher lows on this market, right? So we have been seeing demand coming in after these sell-offs. It is now just a question of whether or not the demand can come in. I will, to the bears' credit, take a look at this. We do see, if we draw this trend line in, we've seen a more impressive sell-off than we have in recent times. You can see in most of the dips previously, we've found demand relatively quickly and relatively strongly, right? We've seen this strong impulsive buying each time price dips. But now we do see price sort of making its way underneath key support with not too much hesitation. However, there are a couple things to watch out for if we're going into the week and you're watching the dollar. Keep an eye on levels like 91.9. And what we can do is we can mark this as a key demand level just to keep an eye if you're looking at the dollar. If you are bullish on the dollar, maybe keep an eye on this level. It does look like it's already sort of trying to bounce. If we zoom this in just a bit, you can see, again, price action here throughout the week. Last week was bearish until the end where we saw a little bit of a tail here form on this. Very arguably, possibly a hammer candle, depending on how technical and specific you are talking. So we'll see if maybe you get something like this going into this week. Maybe we see a little bit of a sold off rally here. Sometimes you get that where you get multiple days down and then, sort of multiple days up in response as sort of things counterbalance themselves out. So with that said, I would say that dollar downside for me right now, it is possible that we continue to see dollar downside, but I would say that it is sort of limited. And I'm not really super bullish or bearish on the dollar at this time. I was more bullish at the dollar around this area. I was wrong about that as we did see the pullback turn into more of a sell-off. So I was definitely wrong about that during this time, but have since basically paused on dollar trading. I have some more other currency pairs that I'm interested in at this time, which I'll definitely talk to you guys about here on these videos. Speaking of that, I'll just show you really quick the trade that I am personally in right now. We'll take a look at CAD yen here on the 1-hour chart. I am long on this pair. This is a trade that I am in personally. So you can see I'm sitting up $1,200 or so. We're going to see if this trade plays out. I meant to move my stop loss to break even, but since the market closed, I was unable to do that. So anyways, this trade, whether it comes crashing down on Monday or skyrockets to the moon, I'll be fine. It's the worst case scenario is a break even trade. That's a great spot to be in. But what I should also make you guys aware of is this is a trade that I shared inside of our Discord group. If you're not in our Discord group, I share every trade that I take. So if I take a trade, I share the entry, the stop loss, etc., in the form of a trade alert for members to see sort of the reasoning behind my trades and to get some form of value out of it. But I said I'm going long on CAD yen here as price retests the lows of the day, looking for a bounce. I was a little bit early to the trade, but ultimately got a pretty decent entry there. CAD looks strong to me overall, especially with the recent FDA full approval of the Pfizer COVID vaccine. Canada was one of the first central banks to announce monetary policy tightening post-pandemic and plans to begin hiking interest interest rates before the Fed. So yeah, this combined with their higher ideal inflation and intentions to combat it makes me more bullish on the CAD, and yen I'm also bearish on due to risk on nature of the current market. So I am sort of still risk on, meaning I'm thinking that some of these currencies like CAD, Aussie, and NZD, which I made a video about last week, could be still on the bullish train in my opinion. So anyways, if you would like to see the trades that I'm taking and join our chat rooms, see the coaching webinars that we do, see our research and everything else that is available inside of our private Discord, you can find out information if you would like to sign up on our website. It's the first link down below in the description if you would like to check it out. Also use that promo code that's there and you'll get a discount on the membership itself. So check it out if you would like to join us inside of our private Discord. I highly encourage you to try it for at least 1 month. See if you like it. Use that code to get a discount, and you might end up staying for the long term, especially if you get the value or I think you'll get plenty of value out of it that will want you to stay. So anyways, CAD yen, I'll be watching that, of course, myself. But there's some other Euro USD is another big one that I want to talk about with you guys today. Check this out. We've got EURUSD on a strong movement to the upside. During the release of the NFP numbers, which is this big spike right here, we saw some pretty big volatility come into the euro. We saw prices skyrocket there and then came crashing down very quickly, made comeback, and then towards the end of the week, we saw that 1 hour chart degrade down to just where we basically started for the day. So very, very volatile NFP. We saw, if you guys watched the live stream with me on YouTube here, it was a lot of fun. We had like 1,400 people in there and we all watched the spike. It was a fun Friday, but we saw the volatility sort of dry up a little bit towards the end of the day. Now the question is, are we going to see the follow through? And if we do see the follow through, we would probably expect EURUSD to continue to go higher, right? What I mean by follow through is the jobs numbers were fairly poor out of the US. And so it's very possible that we could be due to continue this upward streak as people favor the euro over that US dollar. So for me, the EURUSD, just at a first glance, has to be bullish as a trend follower. You can see, from just a demand perspective, we have been seeing consistent higher lows. And so this candle even on the 1 hour chart looks really interesting. You do have this little hammer or pin bar candle, basically just showing rejection at this level here at 1.19. I would say, 1.1878. What I would say that's very important is watch this 1.19 level. Can we break above that level going into this week? That is going to be a question for sure for the bulls and for the bears. Let's go there. So this level, why does this have any significance? Well, a couple of reasons. We saw a lot of rejection there twice, right? And also we saw at the 1.19 level, we saw that it's a huge psychological level on the EURUSD, right? So 1.19, if you see this thing and you say, okay, well, it's coming back up there, a lot of people will probably either be looking to take profits in this area if they were long, or to sell this level because it is a psychological point. It doesn't mean that I think that level is going to just come crashing down. What I'm more interested in personally would be, can we break out of that level and hold above? Because then it offers some great support to continue this upward trend and to stay in the channel that we see, which, by the way, it's a very clean channel there on EURUSD. So for me, I am bullish going into the week on this currency pair. I probably won't be taking the trade just because I do have some positions open myself that I'm letting play out for the time being. I like to keep my number of positions open limited just because it allows me to focus a little easier, but and also to sort of allocate capital to trades that I'm most confident in, if you will. So again, like I said, I share all the trades that I'm taking inside of the Discord. Okay, next one up is going to be GBPUSD. Let's take a look at the pound together. Similar story here. Lots and lots of bullishness here for the pound last week. In fact, really sort of saw the relief that a lot of the pound bulls were probably looking for. We had several weeks of downside motion here, followed by basically this big old breakout last week. And we saw the continuation basically Monday through Friday, which was, again, a really good thing for the bulls. You're seeing these very weak, sort of retracement counter trends before strong buying resumes, right? You've sort of got actually like a triangle pattern here, right? So there's a triangle pattern there. Here's a really ugly triangle pattern here, right? So basically we're just seeing these ceilings form, and then we see the breakout, follow through, ceilings form, breakout, right? So maybe that pattern resumes going into this week. Maybe there's some more opportunities to look for on the pound dollar. I will say we did get quite stretched there towards the end of the week. So for me, if I was to get involved on the pound dollar, it would be more interesting if we were to see a pullback maybe down to that trend line and maybe supportive level. We could actually highlight this area now as what was resistance, possible support now. What if we get a retest down to this level? That looks really interesting to me. That would probably be printing some oversold status there on the RSI as well, which just adds extra confluence to the trade idea. So again, maybe looking at the pound dollar this week, should we see a bit more of a pullback there on the GBP. I like that one a lot. I think that that's a very reasonable idea to look at. And, let's say that I did take that trade. I'd probably be looking to put stops. I think a reasonable area for stops is like something like this, right? Just under structure there, and basically saying, hey, this thing either continues or it doesn't. If it does, great, I'll look to trail stops, or for some of you guys, maybe you have a different approach, but for me, that would mean trailing stops and letting this thing run if it wants to go trending higher next week. Again, sometimes the best trades for me are trades in which I buy into something like this and then it just continues for another week or two, and I never see my trade come back, and those are the best, right? Where I just hold on and hold on and hold on, and finally, eventually trailing stop gets hit and I'm out for a profit. So we'll see if we can get anything like that going into this week. Next one is going to be USDJPY. We'll take a look at the yen today. So the yen had a really interesting week because although the dollar sort of had an initial pop, we saw it fade so hard, right? So it was very weird price action on the actual release. Here is the release. Sorry, I'm wrong about that. The release was over here. So what we saw is this. What I meant to say is we had a big pop the night before, right? Then we sold. The rumors were not great, and then bam, here's the news release. The NFP numbers came out, and we saw a dramatic move to the downside, and then a dramatic move back up, and then followed through. So what this tells us is that the numbers to me were a true surprise to a lot of participants in the market. We saw a lot of bearishness come in last week. And I think that, if anything, is likely to continue. The dollar yen is not a currency pair I love to trade myself, just because I just find that there are some better ones to trade. But again, that doesn't mean you can't trade it. So we are at a supportive level, and watching the dollar yen, we did catch a little bit of a bounce there towards the end of the week. So it's a range bound market right now. So I'm not going to say, I'm going to bet to the downside, but if it does decide to break out, maybe there is something to be played there if you are that sort of trader. But for me, right now, the dollar yen here on the 4-hour chart is very, very choppy, very range bound. We had a fake breakout to the upside, some fake breakouts to the downside, basically just holding this range. So I would say that the path of least resistance here does seem to just be a bounce back up to the top of the range. If this range is just going to continue to chop around, then by all means, who am I to stop it? You know what I mean? So for me, that is the idea there on dollar yen. As we come down here, we did find some strength, though, I wouldn't bet on a massive rally because, again, we had some poor job numbers. So if anything, watch for the breakout. That could be interesting. There's a decent catalyst from last week's job numbers. So we'll just have to keep an eye on this one for sure. But we'll take a look at its cousin, USDCHF. The reason I say cousin is because these two move quite similarly, and part of the reason for that is that you have the Swiss franc and the yen, very, very similar in the sense of they're both risk-off currencies. If you don't know what I mean by risk-off, there are different risk appetites in the market. There are people who are, or there are times where people are much more confident, which has actually kind of been recently after the pandemic, sort of started to recover to some degree in a lot of places. Risk off is more things like the yen, people selling stocks, right, because they're scared, or buying gold, right? So risk off tends to be something that, those are assets that people tend to buy when markets are fearful and the outlook is not good, right? So CHF and JPY are both considered by many standards risk-off currencies. So what that means is that usually when the market goes, sort of scared, it gets into scared mode, we usually see these markets trade down, meaning that the main currency, the USD, trades lower, while the Swiss franc trades higher, pushing the overall chart here to the downside, right? So we have seen a bit of risk off sentiment, or at least a bit of a concern here recently. And I like to use the Swiss franc and the yen strongly as sort of gauges of risk on, risk off. So right now we're very choppy, very indecisive back and forth, obviously. And so you'll just see we've just been holding this range on both of those currency pairs, dollar yen, dollar Swiss. So, for me, watch for a breakout either direction. If we get that breakout, that may, be a driving risk off sentiment coming into the market, and maybe you can relay that into other aspects of your trading. If you're trading gold, maybe that's, signal to go long on gold, things like that. So we'll continue on. We'll take a look now. Speaking of gold, we're going to get there, but I want to take a look at dollar CAD first, just the third USD cross first, or USD primary, and then we'll take a look at gold next. So Canada had a really, really interesting week. As you guys know, I am long on the CAD, so this was nice for myself and my trading. When I looked at this, I was definitely happy to see this. So dollar CAD has been trending very, very strongly, right? But then just last week, we saw a pretty key breakout underneath this very strong level of support there at 1.259. Okay, so price was holding this again and again and again and again. And finally, we were able to see some strength from the CAD enough to push this thing underneath this level and actually hold those movements there. So then we saw the breakout, right? Beautiful close. That was probably a signal in itself. We saw a very slight consolidation, and then we saw the follow through with the jobs numbers and everything on Friday, right? So we broke out yet again. For me, the CAD is still a buy. I've mentioned in my video recently about the commodity currencies and why I am bullish on them right now. I think that the CAD has more opportunity. That is just my opinion, as always. This is not like financial advice or me telling you to go take certain trades. I'm just sharing my thoughts and opinions on these videos. But what I think that the CAD, I think the Aussie, the NZD, I think that they're strong for a reason. I think that there is risk off sentiment around the corner that could push those things higher. Especially, one thing I like about Canada is that their correlation to oil prices due to their high exposure to oil in their economy could send the CAD or the dollar CAD lower, the CAD higher, right? Because remember, we are trading USDCAD. We're looking at this thing and we're saying, oh, CAD is going higher. That would mean that US dollar, relatively speaking, would be going down. So we have cleared this level. I'm going to watch this price action going into next week. Who knows? You may see a bit of a retracement first, but the overall idea for me is I think that the dollar CAD has room to come down. We have seen, we saw this sort of screaming into the trend. We saw this thing just absolutely launch and then came crumbling down. And now, I think that it's very reasonable to think we could make a move. We've already hit 1.25, but maybe we could even start to break out lower and head down to levels like 1.243, let's say. Also very possible to see. So again, we may see the retest before then, but I think that the dollar CAD has potential to start coming back down and maybe to if we look at the daily chart, maybe to reverse this recent sort of upward trend and maybe resume that longer term downtrend that we were seeing here before this little pop to the upside. We'll see. We'll have to watch. But again, there was the end to that screaming trend, very massive upward move, and then a collapse back down. So I think that has potential to continue to drain lower. We'll have to watch it going into this week. Now it's time for gold. We'll take a look at XAUUSD to see what's going on with the gold market here. So a little bit of choppiness, honestly. You can see we had movements to downside, upside, downside, upside. So we are very much sort of still making a decision here on gold. But I want to point something out. We'll take the moving averages off for a second. I want to show you this. So a big thing for me, looking at gold, is that although we don't have a decisively strong trend right now, depending on what time frame you're looking at, but the daily time frame, right, we're very sideways. If we can get a strong break, maybe on Monday or something like that, if we see a big green candle to the upside above this level at 1830, that could be a signal that gold is ready to make a push for even higher levels. So I would say that a reasonable idea, in my opinion, would be a breakout here could lead to movements like this. Maybe not immediately like that, but something, more modest like this, right? We could start to see that waving movement continue right on up to 1900, right? So I'm watching that 1830 mark. I've talked about that many times on stream. I do like that 1830 mark quite a bit. So we'll keep an eye on the gold market going into this week. Like I said, this double top here was a big spot last time, and you can see it. I don't think it's coincidence that that's where we ended last week. You can see 4-hour chart. Or not even double top. We actually had like a triple or a quadruple, scenario in which we saw sellers drop, right? So I'm watching this level at 1830. I'd like to see if we can really break above and stay above that level to show that, what was sort of supply over here is now actually in demand, right? That's the whole idea with support and resistance, is we're just looking for signals to show us, hey, what was, a sell over here is now looking like a buy if you're looking at breakouts. That's kind of what I'm watching for on gold. And then we can also draw in some trend lines here. I'm sure this is a very common trend line being drawn on the gold market. So to be fair to the sellers of gold, similar instance applies here. If we see a break of this upward structure, that would be no bueno for the gold bulls, right? So you may see stuff like this happen. So what I'm saying is that as we come up into this level, I don't know exactly how it's going to react. I probably wouldn't be buying or selling here. I don't know if it's going to break or if it's going to come back down. I would say I'd be interested in either this scenario, if the numbers or if the price action and also the fundamentals lined up. Maybe we could look for an opportunity to sell underneath or buy on a retest if we see strength. And usually what I mean by that is I'm reactionary in the sense that I trade with technicals and I trade with fundamentals. So if something comes out fundamentally very bullish, maybe we get something else that's weak for the dollar going into this week, I could very well see myself looking for this opportunity on the long side. If we see something that's very game changing for the dollar, if they change their, I don't expect it to happen, but if they change their stance on monetary policy suddenly or something like that, then by all means, I could be looking to short. Well, I'm not a big fan of shorting gold, but I'd be more interested in shorting, other currencies against the dollar, right? So just some things to think about. But to be fair to the bears, right, we do have this big level. If you're bearish, a lower low would be really key for you, to see potentially more downside there on the gold market. And if you're a bull, 1830 breaking out would be a huge psychological level, just because, again, we had so much rejection at that area previously. So that is my thoughts on gold. Let's think. I also want to take a look at AUDUSD here really quick. So let's take a look at the Aussie. The Aussie was absolutely so strong last week. We saw like literally only a handful of red candles even. Like it was so strong. Every candle was printing a push to the upside. And this is also why I'm quite bullish on the Aussie and the NZD right now. I think that there is more potential upside here for them, though I am not interested in buying or shorting up at these levels. I'd be interested if we saw a pullback. For example, let's just assume this is may not be the top, but I'm just saying let's just say we assume, and we get a bit of a discount or retracement here this week. Maybe that 38.2% looks not too shabby, right? I could look for that myself, and maybe even more opportunities on the lower time frames. I would say that the Aussie dollar is very bullish, though it may be a bit overextended. Another one that's of interest to me, of course, is NZDUSD as we speak of it. So again, this one even stronger than the Aussie dollar last week. We saw this thing scream to the upside. So I'm just going to keep my fibs. I'll probably have to redraw them if this thing pops higher. But my point is I'm going to keep my fibs going and looking for potential retracements, especially if it lines up with some interesting levels of support. A key one I would say would be this area here at 0.70. But again, 0.70, 70.90. I'm not going to rush to conclusions with this or like, oh, it's just going to be a buy here, because, when the retracement does happen, when a true retracement does happen after a screaming uptrend like this, sometimes you get multiple, selling days. So I'm not going to just, buy right away. For me, this is a sideline play for now. But if we do see the retracement at some point here, very well could be interested in looking for longs on the Kiwi dollar and the Aussie dollar. So keeping an eye on that for sure. Like I said, guys, any trades that I take will be shared inside of the Discord. So if you're not already in the Discord and you would like to join us, you can join our chat rooms. You can see the trades that I am taking, Frank's taking, and Patrick are taking. We share research each week. We share, webinars with Joe Bareka, who is this guy who's sending me a message actually. And you can work with him in the coaching calls, etc. So all sorts of great value there. So if you're not already in the group and you would like to join, there's a link down below in the description to sign up on our website. And I hope to see some of you guys there. Have a great week this week. Trade safe. And to those of you who are American, have a nice holiday we have on Monday here. So markets might be a little bit quieter going into this week, but stay tuned. We will surely see some volatility somewhere along here. Thanks, guys. We'll see you back next time.